What's up, everybody? Thanks for sticking around through the break. We're back. Hour number 2, Friday Night Freedom here on WTF Nation Radio. Welcome to the show. If you're just tuning in, hi. You missed a pretty entertaining first hour. Not to toot my own horn, but I think we did a good job there.
I thought it was entertaining.
Toot toot.
Boop boop.
Currently joining us here on the phone, Mark and Terry. Mark is the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Sprout Health Group. And Terry is... Wait a minute.
You'll get it.
Terry is the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Sprout Health Group. Mark's the Vice President. This all these letters, LCADC, it's the licensed counselor, alcohol, something.
A bunch of mumbo jumbo.
Oh, boy.
Licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor.
There you go. Licensed clinical alcohol and drug. Anytime I see a bunch of letters behind somebody's name, I'm like, this person knows their stuff. Because they don't just give those letters away.
Or cheated on the test.
Oh, that's a good point.
Well, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
That's also a good point.
Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Redleg.
You guys have a very, very important mission, and it's one that we really care about, and that is helping those who are probably in the most dire need a human being could be in. People who are struggling with post-traumatic stress, people who are struggling with addictions, alcoholism, PTSD, to the people who need it most, firefighters, police officers, veterans, EMS personnel, and so on and so forth. And I want to know what drives a person to enter this particular field and to dedicate their lives to helping others who have endured some of the most traumatic things that a person can endure.
This is Mark. And I guess for me, like many people that do what I do is I had my own problems and I sought out help for those problems, and then in turn wanted to help others because I knew some of the desperations that I had at that moment in time. I didn't want other people to feel that way. So to, put programs together that are there to help others, kind of drives, why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm. And Redleg, this is Terry. And to the audience, I'm a veteran of the Vietnam War, and I came back pretty messed up. So over the years, I finally was treated for the addiction I had, and then was treated for the PTSD I had. And I don't know, I guess that's what leads my desire to just, to give back, to help out. But, I really have a feel, especially for the veterans. So it's just, it's an ongoing source of satisfaction for me to be able to help.
Terry, you've said that you've been in recovery for 32 years, and I think that's an interesting statement because at no point did you ever claim that you were cured. Do you think somebody, once they enter recovery, remains in recovery?
No, lots of folks, it depends on what your belief system is, but I subscribe to the disease concept of addiction. And, once it's in me, I basically lose control. And I don't know if I'm ever going to stop. So, I maintain a certain amount of vigil, to make sure that doesn't happen to me. Even if I have to go through surgery, I normally forego the use of a narcotic, unless it's prescribed and it's necessary. So, I don't think once you're in it, I wish I could say once you're in it, you stay in it, but it takes a certain amount of desire and willingness to continue to do so. And I think there comes a point in time, and I know it did for me, where I feel better than I ever felt in my life, and there's no reason for me to use something to feel better, if that makes sense to you.
No, that does make sense. I can see where somebody who had struggled with addiction for a long time and has, I guess, fled from the clutches of addiction and finally realized that they've done so, would feel so good about that they no longer feel like they need to resort back to the substances that they were addicted to. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me.
Right, but that's the big thing about the PTSD treatment, was that initially in the beginning, I was just happy that I wasn't feeling worse and there wasn't things that were happening to me that were worse. So I didn't care how I felt in the beginning, but eventually I had to address the PTSD in order to get over whatever guilt, shame, anxiety I experienced, to really become the person I had hoped I could be, to where, to me, using a drug now is not an option.
Right.
Now, I don't need it anymore to feel good or to feel complete or whole. But I had to do the work.
And one thing that I hear from a lot of counselors, especially those who have dealt with addiction themselves, is you gotta want it. You have to want to overcome your addiction. I mean, that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you don't care enough about yourself and your loved ones to overcome your addiction, then I mean, you're just spinning your wheels.
And that's a lot of what going to treatment does. It helps you see the positives, and because when you're in an active addiction, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. Then once you go into treatment, clinicians and counselors help kind of present that idea to you that your life can get better. Mm-hmm. But it takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a, you're not going to go do a 3-week stint somewhere and then come out cured, quote, cured. You got to put the work in, like Terry said. Mark, you are a 4th generation firefighter. Wow. So it's been in your family for a while.
Yeah, we were just talking about that at dinner. I grew up in a firehouse. I mean, as a little kid, my grandparents, I used to spend the night at my grandfather's, and then the fire whistle, go off. I'd run over to the firehouse with them, open the doors up as a kid. My father's still president there. So I kind of was raised in that environment.
So have you, I mean, you're a former captain with the local, how do you pronounce the name of this?
Lower Chichester.
Chichester. See, we've all been saying it wrong.
I called it Chichester.
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 Yeah,
Lower
you're not
Chichester. You were a captain there.
Yes.
I have noticed, because I had some firefighters in my family, and I was a police officer after I did my stint in the Army, I've noticed that the face of firefighting, I guess for lack of a better term, has changed to the point that it's primarily EMS calls now.
Yeah.
So how does that affect the men and women that work at the firehouse when they're not responding to fires, or I guess the traditional role of a firefighter, and are now having to go deal with EMS calls, a lot of which are dealing with people who have overdosed and are dealing with substance abuse problems? I mean, these things kind of go hand in hand now.
Well, I mean, a lot of the Northeast fire departments still are operating under that old mentality of fire and fire only, but I would say 70–80% of the rest of the country is now doing the dual role stuff, especially down here in Florida. And they work that schedule like 24 hours on, 64 off, or 72 off. So they're working a whole 24-hour shift, which is good if you're just running fire calls, because you may run maybe a fire a night, but then when you add in EMS calls in there and you're doing 20, 30, 40, 50 runs a shift, you're not getting that needed rest in between calls and stuff like that. So they're getting burned out, I think, a lot quicker, because it's one after another. And a perfect example is a friend of mine's a firefighter in D.C., and when he started there, he was just running fire calls, and whenever I go up and visit him now, he's nonstop running EMS, and the role has changed. So they're getting burned out.
These guys and gals have to experience a lot of traumatic stuff as in the EMS role. They see a lot of hurt kids. They see a lot of disfigured people in car accidents. They see a lot of gunshot victims, and they see a lot of people's loved ones there at the scene grieving because something terrible has happened to them.
Right.
So in your role as a crisis stress intervention expert, a traumatic stress expert, what do you see the effect that it's got to wear these people down? what kind of effect are you seeing?
They're getting PTSD. Everybody thought that PTSD was, just a military type condition, but now I think a lot of it has really come to light after Oklahoma City and 9/11, to where they're applying some of the same techniques as, crisis stress intervention and crisis stress management techniques in the fire service as well. So a lot of times after those traumatic events, if there's a good system in place, they'll have a clinician or a counselor come out, and work with them to make sure that the guys are doing okay. And then if they need a follow-up care, they're getting that resource to them.
What's the protocol for, or what do you think the protocol should be for a municipality or whatever, fire department or first responders in general for guys and gals that are dealing with this type of stress? Do they force them to continue to work? Do they give them a little convalescent time? How should they be dealing with this?
Pull off period. I know back at my fire department, if we went to, let's just say, a fire with a death, there would be a cool off period where you would sit on the side and you wouldn't do anything else. You wouldn't, pack hose or anything like that. But pretty much that was it. There should be, at least a peer support specialist, somebody to come in and, that has experienced other firefighters that's been in those same situations, talk to the guys. Because usually what happens is they'll send a clinician that doesn't really understand the job, and they'll sit all the firefighters in a room, and they'll all sit there with their hands crossed, looking with a smirk face, thinking, I don't need to be here.
Right.
Because they don't want to hear it. So it's got to be somebody that's used to or has experience in that role.
And then a lot of the ones that refuse to talk with the counselor, they then turn to alcohol or drugs, right, to keep the voices or the demons at bay, not the voices, but to keep all the bad stuff out of their head. And then they end up with a substance abuse problem, and then they have to go see somebody like Terry, who then helps them with that problem. And then somebody who gets wrapped up in a substance abuse problem that works in public safety, are they ever okay to go back to work, Terry, or do they need to find another career?
No, my experience for almost all of them. I mean, we've done a lot of work over the years with different police organizations, and almost all of them can eventually go back to work. It's just a matter of, taking the time necessary to get the treatment you need, to be able to go through a detox process, to be able to go through a treatment process. And then most of them hook up with an aftercare setting where they start to address the issues, the thoughts, the feelings. That's one of the reasons we designed the whole concept of the first responders program. It's cops being with other first responders for that identification. The same way with veterans being with veterans, just it gives them that response. But almost all of them, over a period of time, can go back into their chosen field. It's not to take them out of the field.
Exactly. I mean, I get that.
And well, that's if they get to, and that's a lot of the promotion of trying to reach the first responders before they get to the point where they lose their job and they can't go back to work. It's get the help now before you get to a point where you get arrested in a DUI. Now you can't work anymore. Right. You get caught stealing meds off the ambulance and you can't work anymore. Once that addiction issue starts to come, get to it early so you don't lose your job. Because once you get those arrests, as you know, in the public safety field, your career is over.
Right. Have you ever seen a situation, either of you ever seen a situation where a first responder has been dealing with mental health or substance abuse problems, and the agency kind of just turned their back on them instead of supporting them?
Yes.
That's unfortunate, too, because I feel like the agency considers them a liability and they just write them off.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I always, when somebody, I like when they call me on their own, because, we're there for the firefighter or the vet. We're there for them. We're not there for the agency. So we're going to try to do everything in our power to make sure that they don't get jammed up with work. But once they get caught, that's it. Once they're in the system.
Right.
Just to put something out there, like I guess a lot of the firemen and policemen, I don't know so much about, the EMTs, but the firemen and policemen in a lot of areas are with what I would call a union, whether it's, and a lot of times the unions that are educated, just like a lot of the labor unions that started up in the New York area, have their own people internally that can recognize these things and talk to people before it gets out of hand, or maybe, can cut a deal with the management for them to go off the treatment and be on a probationary period.
Right.
So, I mean, there's insight nowadays, and some areas are certainly better than others. But, I think there's that recognition now that, being able to help, have an organization, just like they did with a lot of the bigger companies where they have an employee assistance program.
That's what we had at the police department that I worked for. There was an employee assistance program, but there was really no protocol in place for an officer-involved shooting. The protocol was, I guess, kind of, are you good? Yeah, I'm good. We'll go back to work.
Right.
Yeah.
The guy says he's good. He's not good. He just killed somebody.
Yeah, he just says he's saying that because he doesn't want you to know he's not good.
Right. And then they turn again. I mean, it just as sure as the sun rises every morning, they turn to alcohol or drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it destroys them. But fortunately, I think more and more these agencies and individuals are coming to realize that these are not the guys that turn to alcohol and drugs are not bad people. This is the only way that they know to cope with the bad things that they've had to deal with. So that's where organizations such as yours come into play. So if somebody's listening to us right now who is dealing with this sort of thing, wanted to get in touch with you, Mark and Terry, and your organization, how would they go about that?
They can call the 800 number, 866-676-7500, or go to the website frontlinerehab.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you will provide them with the resources or point them in the right direction, because one of you guys kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that they don't want to reach out for help because it somehow gives the perception that they're weak, or they're no longer good at their job, or the agency is going to consider them to be a liability instead of an asset.
Right.
It's the same thing in the military, where you don't want to ask for help because you don't want your buddies to view you as weak. There's a stigma attached to this, and it's unfortunate because it's costing people their jobs, it's costing people their lives, it's ruining families. So we got to overcome that stigma, that it's the stigma of, if you ask for help, you're weak. You're not weak. You need help. Your buddy trips and falls on the battlefield, you pick them up. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys are providing a wonderful service, and I think it's unfortunate that more people don't reach out to gentlemen such as yourself, because you have a wealth of knowledge and experience. Again, I have here in front of me on my screen everything that the two of you are qualified in, and the experience you have. For somebody to not reach out to persons such as yourself is truly unfortunate. And Terry, that you say that you're willing to come out and say that you struggled with substance abuse and that you have been in recovery for 32 years, I think speaks volumes, because you are, in case anybody didn't hear it, a Vietnam veteran, the United States Army. By the way, I didn't get an opportunity to tell you this, but thank you, Terry, for your service.
And thank you for your service, Redleg.
I appreciate that. And let's not overlook the fact that Mark was a captain with a fire company. They don't just give that away either. So thank you both for your service to your country and your community. And on that note, we'll take a short break. I'm going to restart Facebook Live, and Mark and Terry will rejoin us on the other side of this break. Everybody, stay tuned. There's more Friday Night Freedom coming up right here on WTF Nation Radio.
You're listening to Redleg on the voice of U.S. Army WTF Moments. WTF Nation Radio.
Hungry for another taste. You stumble around the time you waste, and your table's overturned. Sooner or later you crash, then you burn. I think I wanna die tomorrow. And are you gonna be with me? I think I wanna die tomorrow, 'cause I'm out of time and I'm out of my mind. The simple ways come and go. Still I love the way you turn me on. But I just can't find the words, 'cause everything I say sounds so absurd. I think I wanna die tomorrow. Die on a baby. I think I wanna die tomorrow, 'cause I'm out of time and I'm out of my mind.
Hello, everybody. If you're just tuning in, this is the second half of Friday Night Freedom, and you're listening or watching the WTF Nation Radio. I'm Redleg, your host, and my co-host, Minx, is back.
I am.
You pulled some magic there. I looked, and you weren't there, and then I looked again, and you were. How'd you do that?
I sat down.
Ancient Chinese. Oh, you sat down. Oh, that's a lot simpler than what I had in mind. Tonight's guests, Mark and Terry, they are looking at the businesses that you guys are involved in and everything, and I got confused initially. Mark's is Chief Executive Officer with 360 Wellness Incorporated and Vice President of Business Development of the Frontline program at Sprout Health Group. And Terry is the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Sprout Health Group. You guys are involved in a lot of stuff, it looks like. And I tagged you in the Facebook post, so anybody that wants to go to your Facebook page and check them out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for hanging out for the second half of the show.
Third half.
It's the second half of the second hour or something. Math. I suck at math. Fractions. Before the break, we were talking with Mark and Terry about the importance of seeking out help when you need help, whether or not you think you need help, with post-traumatic stress, with substance abuse, with addiction issues that may arise from the traumatic stress. And I think we have an interesting dynamic going on here because sometimes we talk about substance abuse on the show. Sometimes we talk about post-traumatic stress on the show. Rarely ever, though, do we have two experts here, two people who are experts in both fields to tie those things together because more often than not, the substance abuse problems arise from the stress that it itself arises from a traumatic experience. They all tie together. So to have both of you on here, I think is fortunate for us.
Thank you.
Anybody who missed the first part of the show, Terry is a Vietnam veteran. He was in the United States Army in Vietnam. So you want to talk about world experience. This guy's been around. And he's been in the addiction field for 29 years. You started as an intern, Terry, and now you're a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor.
Correct.
And so you said you've been in recovery yourself for 32 years. I think if anybody has any doubt as to Terry's credentials and experience, we just erased that. And Mark has been involved in the public safety sector for a long time, long enough to reach the rank of captain with his fire department, and he is a fourth generation firefighter. So, fire your questions off, everybody. These guys know their stuff. We don't get second rate guests here on WTF Nation Radio. These guys are experts in their field.
Thank you.
I think the important message that we left before the break was: if you need help, get help. How do you give somebody a push in the right direction and help ensure that they are seeking out the help they need? I mean, initially, I guess you have to identify that somebody needs help.
Right.
Something like that, from having done interventions for about, 20 years or something like that, there's always warning signs. I mean, even when I worked with adolescents, we had put together a sheet that we gave out to parents of warning signs, or teachers, things to look out for. There are warning signs, and you do want to make the attempt to intervene early, before it gets out of control, or before it causes all kinds of problems, or before you have a DUI where somebody gets killed. There's a lot of different types of interventions, but that's the purpose usually, is to intervene in their drinking and drugging with the family in order to be able to relay to the individual just how their drinking or drugging is affecting everybody around them. So there's a lot of things you can do. You had brought it up earlier about you have to want it, and that's not always the case. if you were going to wait sometimes till somebody wanted it, my own experience was that I wanted help long before I was able to pull the trigger because it was so easy to put it off for another day, which turned out to be years. So
right.
There's a lot of effective tools out there that can be utilized to reach people. But sometimes you got to be upfront and direct and honest with them about how it's, what you're seeing and how it's not only affecting them, but affecting you.
One thing that we preach a lot here is check on your buddies. Who knows you better than the person that you spend your day with, somebody who you work closely with. And that applies not only to the military, but in the public safety sector and first responders. You see these people every day. You're close. You're like a family. You could see when something's not right. So I think that your friends and coworkers and those that are close to you will identify this, but a lot of them don't act on it because the case a lot of times is, hey, bro, you okay? Yeah, I'm good. And then that's the end of it. But he's clearly not good.
A lot of, especially in the fire department, typically what happens is the alcoholic or the addict becomes kind of the joke of the weekend, Everybody goes out, they have a good time, except there's that one guy that just always overdoes it, acts like a total fool. And instead of sitting the guy down on Monday morning and saying, hey, maybe you need to get a little bit of help, you don't drink like you should, they make the jokes about it. And he becomes a laughingstock. And then 3 months later, when he crashes his car or commits suicide, everybody's sitting around the table saying, oh, we never seen that coming.
Bullshit.
Well, yeah, you did. He was the guy, you guys were laughing about all weekend.
Yeah. There's a statement, question statement here in the Facebook live chat from Derek. When I said, tying the PTSD and the substance abuse together, he says, Derek says, anytime they gave me more than Vicodin, the withdrawals would be too much to deal with. For pain on pain is horrible. I use, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Kratom, Kratom. Now, how do you guys feel about that? I've done a little bit of reading on that, but I'm not overly familiar with it. But it sounds to me like Derek is relying on a substance to cope.
Yeah. There's a lot of argument about kratom, kind of like marijuana. It's natural. So, you can get over PTSD without substances, with the right treatments.
And here's one from Nathan. It says, I'm a firefighter on the civilian side. And in the military, I got diagnosed with PTSD 3 years ago. I recently acquired a service dog. Now I'm trying to get my department to recognize PTSD. I've also had guys from my unit who had substance abuse problems, and it almost cost them their career. I was lucky that I've never had substance abuse problems. So the service dog's working for Nathan.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big believer in the service dogs. My dog, when I first, when I had my problems and I had my dog, he was my, the best friend, there with you. I love service dog programs.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a how to put this. I guess it's a tradition. I can't find any better term than that. Kind of a lifestyle in the military, especially, where it's just. And Andrew here says, alcohol was glorified and made into a sport. For the young guys of the military, that's true because it was true with me. We would go out on the weekends and try to outdrink each other and end up shit-faced.
Right.
Is that setting laying the foundation for something that's going to be dangerous in the future, or is this just going out and socializing and being young and stupid?
Well, Redleg, there's one of the things that I saw years ago working with adolescents was, as you're developing skills to coping skills and lifestyle skills to move from being an adolescent to basically what we call a well-rounded adult, there becomes a point in time where drinking and drugging starts to become your recreational event. You know what I mean? And then after a period of time, it might be the only thing in order to have fun. And the more and more you do it, the more and more it becomes ingrained in the experience that after a while you don't know how to do anything else. And and when you begin to look forward to the weekend so you can do this recreation event, it becomes more and more ingrained into your lifestyle. And that, I don't think anybody ever sets out to have an addiction problem or alcoholism, but
Right.
sooner or later, for some folks, certainly not everybody, it gets away from you.
So they find out, through recreational drinking that it can be a coping mechanism, and just because I use the term coping mechanism doesn't mean it's okay. It's just a way that they choose to cope with it, and then it starts that downward spiral.
Right. I might add, because I guess a part of me would feel remiss if I didn't. I want to go back to what that young fellow was talking about with kratom, but the one thing in my experience is that, for years, rehabs preached what you would know as an abstinence-based program, that a drug is a drug. You know what I mean? And what people get addicted to is the way the substance that they're doing makes them feel. And you can easily, and it was believed to be it's like changing seats on the Titanic. If I sit over here, I'll be safe. And in reality, the ship's going down. But nowadays, there's more and more people that are venturing into what they call harm reduction programs. There's a fellow I know that's now has a rehab where they're teaching them to use marijuana instead of heroin. Now, from a harm reduction point of view, yes, it's certainly not as bad. But the reality of with something like a marijuana or a kratom is you may not experience any really negative side effects until you've been at it for a long time. I mean, guys that I grew up with that smoked marijuana religiously, and to this day, I mean, their vocabulary in their 60s is now limited to about 3 words. And most of it is like, yeah, man, like, wow. And that's a pretty sad state of affairs. So, again, would it have been better for them to bottom out early on, or do they have to wait until, there's no coming back? And it's the same way with alcohol. Alcohol does a lot of damage to the human body.
Absolutely.
Over a period of time. And sometimes there's no coming back. So, I would recommend the fellow that's on kratom, really get with a good professional and take a good hard look at it. Explore the options. Don't just settle.
Yeah, I guess everybody that's using a substance of some sort to cope is just living in the moment. And, of all people to look to the future, they need to do it the most, but I think they're the least capable. And I'm not taking a swipe at anybody that's dealing with substance abuse or that's relying on something to get through their daily life.
Especially with something like PTSD, anything to make you feel better from that moment that you're in. Can you say sometimes that that's what's in front of them? Can you blame them? Because it's a scary thing.
It is. Devin just asked me if I'm still alcohol free. Yes, I am, Devin. I haven't had a drink since before Thanksgiving. Still on the wagon.
God bless.
I don't think I had an alcohol problem. I think I was on the verge of developing one, and that was kind of a wake-up call, so I just stopped drinking.
Good for you.
That's actually very admirable. Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
And Andrew says, I disagree that solely marijuana has produced people with 3-word vocabularies.
That's just my experience. Doesn't make it a fact. It's just the people I know.
Yeah, and I don't know, Andrew, that's McNasty. McNasty. I don't know that the marijuana is having a physiological effect that would cause somebody to have a 3-word vocabulary. I think maybe over time it changes your lifestyle to the point that you just kind of are in permanent chill mode, and therefore don't like to use anything with more than 1 or 2 syllables when you talk. So yeah,
possible.
Go ahead, Mix.
Oh, sorry. I do have a question. So during the break, I know you guys, we talked about like my personal experience, growing up with, alcoholism and an addict mother, and, being told that, I have to be nice to her and family members telling me that, I'm driving her to drink and to use because I'm not coddling her and I'm not being nice to her. And when I respond back with no, like she's going to do it because she wants to do it, it has nothing to do with me. They say that I'm wrong. And like, I get it. I should support my mom in her attempt to, one, get sober and then also to stay sober. But at the same time, like I've been dealing with this since I was 13, 14 years old. And it's gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, you're either going to do it or you're not. So stop lying to me and saying that you're going to do it and then like letting me down. And so I'm just wondering, like, if there is a quote unquote correct way of dealing with someone who is like a serial rehab visitor.
A serial rehab visitor. Interesting.
Someone who's been like, multiple times.
Just to answer your question, was there's this new wave of adventure seekers that we've experienced, where these young folks, especially with the opiates and how powerful they are. We experienced a whole lot of young folks that are almost made going to rehab a way of life. So, they could have, I've run into young people, 10, 13, 15 rehabs, so at Sprout Health over at our New Jersey location, we started what we call the chronic relapser track, which is built around that type of a client that is, that goes to rehab on a frequent basis. They're what we call frequent flyers. We've added a whole lot of new stuff, to not just your basic introduction to a recovery lifestyle, but why is it that you're so resistant to getting sober? Like, what has to happen before the light bulb goes off? And to really allow them to experience what it's like for their families. Every time you get up and go somewhere, you're going to a family event at a rehab.
Yeah. And a lot of addiction doesn't affect the individual. It devastates everybody around them. So there's, such as yourself, there's resentments and things like that. And it may just be for you. You have to go to, they have what's called Al-Anon and Nar-Anon for family members of, alcoholics and drug addicts to learn how to positively cope with the addict. So that may be something you'll explore.
Yeah. Okay.
You definitely want to support the recovery and not enable the addiction.
Yeah. And it's like the way I guess that I support it is I give her like tough love, and my family thinks I should coddle her, and I don't coddling her and like letting her get her way on things. Like, it doesn't help, because she goes back into like to the same old patterns and the same old routine.
Yep.
That's kind of what we call loving somebody to death.
Yeah. And shut up, hooker. Sorry, the dog.
She's yelling at her dogs.
But yeah, like, and the last time that she had a bad relapse, like they found her in the bottom of a pool, and yet, like, for whatever reason, like she's still allowed to drive, and it like all these sort of things that like are out of my control. And I'm just like, why are these happening? Like, you're enabling her. And yet I'm being told I'm being the mean one and I'm causing her to drink.
I guess that raises a question of at what point is your emotional involvement with somebody who's dealing with an addiction problem and struggling with the treatment, at what point is your emotional involvement harmful to you? And should you end your emotional involvement with that person? In other words, how far do you let them drag you down before you get out of it?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that has to happen. I mean, it's a hard thing to think of, because it's a family member. But sometimes a separation is needed.
With my dad, my biological father, after years, because he's an alcoholic, after years and years of dealing with his alcoholism, probably within the past 3 years, I just had to cut him off. I couldn't, like, for me and my own family, my children and my husband, to be able to move on, I had to cut him out of my life. Unfortunately, that's had to happen, but it's been the best decision I've ever made for my family.
Yep, without a doubt.
Well, that's unfortunate, but sometimes it's a step you have to take because there comes a time in your life that you have to do well for yourself and your immediate family. And you know, if a loved one has been struggling for years and years and years, and they're not receptive to your attempts to get them into a recovery and to stick with it, then it's not fair to you. It's unfortunate that somebody would be that resistant or unable to recover. But you know, like in your case, Mom, you just had to let it go. And I don't think poorly of anybody who makes that decision.
No, you can't.
What I find amazing is there's 5 strangers here, you know, talking, and every one of us has experience with somebody with an addiction issue. Absolutely. So this problem affects pretty much somebody. You know, everybody has experience dealing with somebody with an addiction or has.
So that, you know, all you can do, everybody, is the best you can and try to get them oriented in the right direction and get them involved with the program such as the one that Mark and Terry are part of. And I want to, before I wrap the segment up, Mark and Terry, give you an opportunity to tell the listening and viewing audience how they can get in touch with you with Sprout Health Group and the Frontline program and all the good things you guys have got going over there.
Mm-hmm. So the Frontline program is a track specifically for military and public safety folks that we built at Sprout Health Group, and it's set up under a peer support model. So you'll be around the same kind of people that you feel comfortable talking around. And you can go to frontlinerehab.com or call the 800 number at 866-676-7500.
Mm-hmm. And Redleg, for anybody that's really not in the first responder job situation, if anybody, we have a call center where we're always willing to talk to people and try to help them if at all possible or steer them in the right direction. And that number is 855-298-7477.
855-298-7477. Yes. It's open to anybody. And again, I would just like to stress to everybody that's listening, if you think you need help, then you need help. Reach out for help. It's not a sign of weakness. To me, acknowledging the fact that you need help and then not seeking out help is probably, I guess, more of a problem than the problem you're actually dealing with, because you have identified that you need help. I can't count the number of times that people have reached out to us here on the radio station that just need somebody to talk to, and sometimes that's all it takes. But take that step. Nobody's going to think poorly of you.
They don't even know you. You know, if you feel like you're embarrassed, I mean, you call our call center, call the 800 number, and we talk to you. You may never see us or hear from us again, you know, so there's nothing to be ashamed of.
And the other thing that we found really helpful, Redleg, that we're doing on our www.advhealth.com is we have that chat line. So if you're worried somebody's going to track your number, your phone number if you call in, or you prefer to just chat, you know, by typing, completely anonymous, feel free.
That's true.
There are so many resources out there that are available to everybody. So I encourage everybody to take advantage of them. Terry, Mark, thank you guys so much. It's been a very informative segment. I hope we can have you back on again sometime in the future, because the amount of experience and knowledge that you possess, I think, is a great thing for this community, the military community, and also the first responder community. We have quite a few listeners from the first responder community, so the resources are out there, guys. People like Mark and Terry are there, and they want to see you succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to help you. So we'll take this break. Mark, Terry, you guys can hang on for just a second and take this break. When we come back, the video is going to restart one more time, and we'll come back and do some party games.
Yeah.
Because Minx wants to kick everybody's ass at party
And
games.
Quiplash, bring it,
Quiplash.
motherfuckers.
Oh, jeez. Kiss your mother with that mouth?
No.
Oh. Well, then. We'll be back, guys. The video's going to restart. We'll do party games.